You're about to witness a kind of miracle. The man responsible for it is Italy's most flamboyant and, it has to be said, controversial neurosurgeon, Professor Giorgio Brunelli. His patient, a man totally paralysed from the waist down, who was once told he would never walk again. But thanks to a revolutionary technique developed by Professor Brunelli, that man has taken his first steps and become the first paraplegic ever to walk again. As Liz Hayes points out in her story, this one small step could be the giant leap medical science has been looking for in the battle against paraplegia. Blink and you'll miss it, but what you're seeing here is a medical first with incredible implications. The leg of this paralysed man is moving, wait for it, because it thinks it's his arm. Angelo Colombo, once paralysed from the waist down, is learning to walk again thanks to a new and much criticised transplant procedure. At the moment, he's supporting his weight on his arms, but even so, doing what no paraplegic has ever done before, sending messages to his legs and getting them to respond.
Sto bene con me stesso, sì. Something great has happened to me, something extraordinary. Nothing can be better than feeling my body again.
Angelo's inspiring quest to walk is being made possible by Professor Giorgio Brunelli, Italy's most famous and flamboyant neurosurgeon. The operation on his patient with a severed spinal cord made headlines around the world.
He is the first man who can walk on his volitional command in the world after a total transaction of the cord.
That's an extraordinary feat, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I'm very glad, I'm very proud of that.
Giorgio Brunelli, 74, is a larger-than-life character. His varied medical skills uniquely qualified him for this operation. He's a pioneer in microsurgery, a world-renowned neurosurgeon and orthopedic specialist who's long yearned to help paralysed patients.
I was able to see some paraplegics, and it was so little to me to say them, I have nothing to do for you.
Fix the cable in the metal.
What he did was embark on years of research into a radical version of an accepted medical technique, transferring nerves between muscles to restore sensation and movement.
So I thought, if I can transfer a nerve from one muscle to another, I can transfer a nerve from one limb to another.
That was the radical difference with Brunelli's plan. Transferring nerves meant for performing functions in one limb into an entirely different limb to perform an entirely different set of functions. In 1990, not without criticism and skepticism, Italian medical authorities gave him the go-ahead to try his experimental technique on a human being. Were you nervous? Were you anxious when you did that first operation?
I was, of course, because it was the first time I did this operation and anybody had done it before. So I was very anxious, and also it was not easy to find a patient to accept the operation, because this operation had to be done only on volunteers fully informed.
The patient he found was Angelo Colombo, a house painter and amateur boxer who became a paraplegic when his spinal cord was severed in a fall from a building. He was too heavy to be the ideal patient, according to Professor Brunelli, but he did possess one essential quality, an absolute determination to walk again. One of the things that you do offer patients is hope. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, of course, I offer hope, but I want not to give hope, because I don't want to give them a hope if it is not fulfilled.
In a series of operations in 1990, Brunelli took major nerves leading from Angelo's spinal column, cut them out, and redirected them. Instead of travelling along the arms to control hand functions, he directed them down into Angelo's legs. For the first time since his accident, Angelo had a bridge between his paralysed lower body and the fully functioning nervous system of his upper body. It took 18 months, though, of intensive physical therapy before one day at the beach he received the first sign the operations had worked.
Ecco, questo movimento, ti faccio ridere. I was sunbathing and I moved my hand and I saw my leg moving. Infatti la prima cosa che ho preso in mano il telefono. The first thing I did was phone Professor Brunelli and say, "You are a great man." Io glielo dico.
Do you remember?
I remember, yes.
How did you feel when you got that call?
Enthusiastic, absolutely very, very glad.
And very, very relieved, too. What the professor had given to Angelo's legs, he'd taken from his hands.
So he lost sensitivity on the ulnar.
It meant difficult surgery to remove and redirect the nerves. It meant sacrificing some functions, losing strength and some feeling, and meant other operations to restore some of what had been lost. But the upside was so exciting, it made it all worthwhile.
No, tu non fare niente. Ripeti.
What you're seeing here is a muscle in a paralyzed limb moving, courtesy of those nerves that think they're still in Angelo's arm. Just as Professor Brunelli had predicted, Angelo was able to get movement in his legs by moving the arm from which the nerve had come.
Ripeti un'altra volta. Bene.
Now, a few months down the track, he's taught his brain to recognize the new location of the transplanted nerves.
Sì, no, è una cosa, it's very strange, but it's amusing in a way. It demonstrates how extraordinary the mind is, that our mind can be trained. When I walk now, I don't think to move my arms. To walk now, I think of my legs, not my arms.
How medical research works. Do you believe we will have paralyzed people walking normally?
I do believe it. I don't know in how many years. I don't know which will be the best technique, We have to follow all the type of research.
For the record, Angelo is the first paralyzed person to walk of his own volition. But it's not the record book that interests him. It's the simple fact that he now has a sense of independence, a sense of being in control of his own body.
Questo ti cambia un po' la vita. It has changed my life. I walk every day, I train and I walk. It's not like before the accident, but now I can feel my body again. That is wonderful.
He can stand up alone without needing any help. He can walk 50 to 60 steps. He can drive his car. So he's autonomous.
In words from another era of human achievement, what's been made possible for Angelo is a small step for one man that could be a giant leap for mankind.
Però nessun disabile, paraplegics will never accept a wheelchair. When the first heart transplant was done, the patient lived only 18 days. Now, heart transplant patients live for 15, 20 years. So I think I have arrived at one point. Other patients will go further.
Brunelli's next patient is Tanya, whose spine was shattered in a motorbike accident. Her nerves have already been transplanted, and she is training for the day when she might walk again unaided. She is younger and fitter than Angelo, and the chances are she'll show even better results. Not that she wishes for much, only what the rest of us take for granted. So what would you like to have for your future?
Ma dice sempre nell'ambito...
I would like to find a job. I have a boyfriend, and I would like a family and children.
But Tanya knows that's a long way off. Ahead of her are years of frustrating physical and mental therapy to achieve even the most basic walking. And what do you say to those people who say it's not worth it if all you can do afterwards is walk 20 steps?
Sono contraria. I think before saying that, someone should be in this situation because it is so important to be able to move by yourself, to walk even a small distance, to be able to do even small things. You should be in my situation before judging me.
There is both praise and skepticism for Professor Brunelli's work amongst the medical community. There are some who say his research funds should go towards something other than what they consider an improbable dream. What do you say to those doctors who believe that what you're doing is basically a waste of time because it is so limited?
It's very limited, but it's the beginning of a new era. So I think that we will not be able to do something more if we don't start with something little. It's the first step. We put foot in the door to open the door, but someone had to do that.
Professor Brunelli has no thoughts of retirement. He's just become lead surgeon for a European community-funded project called Stand Up and Walk. Its aim is to find a high-tech solution to paraplegia. Later this year, he'll operate on Ludwig, implanting a series of computer-controlled electrodes into his paralyzed muscles. What you do seems to be hard and tedious at times. What motivates you?
When you start to follow an idea, you continue to follow it until you get the solution. So I will not find the final solution. So I have to continue all during my life.
You can't give up until you get that
No, I can't.
answer.